Join the millions of Australians that own crypto through Independent Reserve, Australia's most trusted crypto exchange. It's fast, easy and secure. Buy crypto today at independentreserve.com.
Welcome to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
So good to have you with us for another edition of This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funeral, celebrating lives. And today we celebrate the life of a man who's had his football life celebrated very recently. He was one of the recent inductees into the AFL Hall of Fame, one of Melbourne's greatest ever. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have David Neitz in the studio. Nita, welcome.
Thank you very much, Pete. It's a privilege to be here.
And congratulations on the honour. Well deserved.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. No, it was a fantastic night, and great to get that kind of recognition from the highest echelon of the AFL. So it was a fantastic night. Certainly, it's not something that you go into your career thinking about too much, but excuse me. But to get to the end of the journey, and for people at that level to think you've made enough of an impact to join that elite and esteemed company, it's a really nice feeling, and a fantastic one for all the parents, the friends, and all those things as well.
And I guess that's the important thing too, that everybody gets to share that, because individual things along the way, a great season or a great game, are wonderful in themselves, but this is for a body of work, and this is for a lifetime in the game.
Well, that's right, and that's what it is, and it's it's at a different kind of emotion, I guess, when you're going through those things, as you say, the emotion of taking the mark on the ground, or winning a game, or even at the end of a season, after a long hard slog of a season, and you get together to celebrate those types of things. It's a very different kind of emotion, a different kind of feeling. Some 10 years after I'd hung the boots up, to then sort of revisit all those stories and all those people. It's a really nice feeling.
Was it all a bit surreal when you walked into the room that night and looked around and thought to yourself, I'm just about to join their ranks? Yeah,
well, I mean, the start of the night, you have, Bobby Skilton gets up there and introduced by Simon Madden, and Barry Cable wanders into the room, and all of the who's who of the AFL are there. So, it certainly is it's a humbling kind of feeling when you see all the names in the room, and it certainly hits you when you step inside and see those faces, that's for sure.
I heard Terry Wallace talking about the night with his induction, and one of the things that he said was he was late in the night, he had someone come up behind him and gave him a bear hug, and he turned around and it was John Nichols, and he didn't know John Nichols that well. Was there anyone who came up to you on the night that you didn't know that well, or you didn't know at all, and congratulated you, and you were really chuffed that they came up and said well done?
Well, it must be something about those Carlton boys, but Greg Williams was the main man. He was determined to hunt me down and have a beer with me, and Merck's teammate Paul Hopgood and Russell Robinson as well. He tracked us down all night. Paul Hopgood used to tag him actually back in the day, so I think it was Diesel's turn to tag him. But no, look, we had a fantastic night, and Sticks Kernahan was floating around, and obviously Terry as well. But no, Diesel was in fine form and good fun.
All right. Well, you've got all sorts of reasons needed to be happy at the moment, because your football team's purring along nicely. Do you see something there? Do you see that this may very well be the team that could break that drought? Yeah,
look, it's you have to see something there at the moment. They're playing a really good style of footy. I really like the way they're going about it. Obviously, their coach has put a lot of time in over the last couple of years, and 3 years really. Even when Ruzi was still head coach, he had a lot of say in the style of and the brand of footy that he wanted to put down. So, Todd Viney, as far as the list management type side of things goes, it's it's been a long time in the making for him when he sort of wanted to put his footprint on the type of players and that he wanted to bring in to the team, and obviously going back to Paul Roos himself, who really, I suppose, after quite a bit of time of being really disjointed as a footy club, to start that process of bringing everyone together. I think Roosie was quite big on the man management side of things and building that culture, and so he and Todd Viney certainly in putting the list together did a fantastic job. And then for Goody to come in, implement his style of play, and it's with the style of game that he wants to play. There's some heartache in that as well, but it seems certainly the last few weeks that's all started to click. The playing group have sort of come through to this point together. And putting it out there where it counts on a Saturday. So no, they're in good form, but they're just so hard to. We've had teams back in my day where we were going along beautifully, and it doesn't really matter. You've got to make it count at the business end of the year. So I guess that's the challenge that's still out there to those boys. They missed out in the finals last year, so they've got to take that step. And I think at this point in time, their sights should be well and truly on the top four.
Where you started your footy journey, it was probably a little bit chilly down in the Apple Isle. So you've joined the likes of Baldock and Richardson and Hart and the great Tasmanians to make it into the Hall of Fame. Where did the footy journey begin for you, Nita?
Well, it was. I wasn't in Tassie for very long, I've got to say. Dad was down there working and playing footy in Ulverston, so northwest Tassie, and effectively I was born there, and I was there for a few years, and then back to Melbourne. So I've got a nice connection into Tassie, but all my memories growing up are really here in Vic. But Dad was fantastic. He played quite a lot of footy in his junior days and in his younger days, and so played over in best and fairest and premiership over at Ulverston and Berwick Footy Club. He did that for a little while and sort of played around quite a bit. Had a go at the Saints, but didn't quite break into that team. So I played a few games in the Rezzies and couldn't quite push through. So I guess it starts from Dad and his sort of love of the game, and passing that through to me as a young kid, and there's not too many times that I can think about where I didn't have a footy in my hand as a youngster, and then got into it relatively quickly. Played as a 6-year-old in the midgets at Parkmore Footy Club, and spent a bit of time at Noble Park Footy Club as well as a junior, coming through the ranks in around the Dandenong District Footy League, which is where I cut my teeth.
How did you find your way to Melbourne? Who was the first person who identified that there might have been some talent there?
Oh, gee, there's. I suppose back in the day it was a zone system. So I was playing at Parkmore Footy Club at that point of time, and they used to have the word would go around that there was a talent scout around, and all the kids would stick their chest out and go that little bit harder. Everyone thinks they're a chance to make it. So it's probably at those games at around about under 13, under 14 level where there was some talk. And then I ended up getting invited down that was the Robbie Flower development program that they had going on at Parkdale, and there was a coach down there by the name of Rob Dean, who probably probably 14, I guess, went down there with a whole stack of kids and started in their junior development program. So that was I guess the beginning of it all. And played in under 15 rep side, made the state side in the under 15 representative carnival, which was a lot of fun. So I guess that's where it all started, back there at Parkmore and with Rob Dean in at Melbourne.
And it wasn't too long before you were actually a young scrawny kid playing against men. Well,
yeah, I guess my journey went through from I still playing at Parkmore and trying out for the Teal Cup. So I was playing at the Parkmore under-15s at that stage and trialling out for the Teal Cup, and I got through the repechage a few times, and it got to the pointy end of that, and Dennis Pagan, who was the coach at the time, said, "Look, son, if you want to play this Teal Cup side, you've got to go and play under-19s." So at that stage, I'm 15, year 9 or something like that at school, and playing against 18, 19-year-olds. So I took the challenge, said, "Yeah, okay, sure, let's go for it," and sort of went down to the Demons in the under-19s under Mark Cross, who unfortunately just passed away with cancer. So condolences to his family and everyone who knows Mark. But he was a hard man, and he was good for guys like myself and Paul Hopgood, David Swartz, who sort of went through the ranks with him. But he didn't show too many favours to anyone, so you had to grow up quickly. He demanded that you were hard at the footy, and instilled some good training habits and some good game day habits into me from an early age.
Were you intimidated at all, being a younger fella playing against people who are 3-4 years older? And if you were, did you show it at any stage, or did you make sure you hid that intimidation?
I was a skinny kid playing on the wing, which was pretty unfamiliar for me at that point in time. I was playing in the ruck and centre-half forward, centre-half back as a junior predominantly. But it was. But you can't show it. You got to just go at the game as you do. But I remember there was a game we played at the Junction Oval, and I think it was against Richmond. I've got no idea who the guy was, but there was a scuffle kind of broke out on the wing, and I was pretty close by, and I thought, here we go. I've got to get myself involved in this. So there was two Richmond guys under my Melbourne teammate, and so I tried to grab one of the Richmond guys and yank him and pull him off of our guy with all my might and all the gusto. I didn't budge him. I thought, oh God, this is going to turn ugly if he turns around and has a go. But the things, that's footy. You just got to throw yourself in, and once you're out there, you're in. So you just go as hard as you can.
Let's just jump forward a little bit. This will be a disjointed chat because that's the way I always do this program. You talked about being a skinny kid. The one thing that always struck, I think, anyone who watched you play was your build, your athleticism. Did you all of a sudden turn into a gym junkie at some stage? Because I think Gary Lyon actually had a bit of a chip at you in the tribute that he said as you were being inducted into the Hall of Fame, that you were pretty happy with the results of all the gym work that you did. Well,
I think Gary was the opposite. Gary didn't step foot into the gym. I don't know how he knew that. But no, look. As a relatively young guy coming in, you knew you had to, as a key position guy, and I'm sort of 17, 18, you've got to step up quickly and as quickly as you can. So I did a lot of training. One of my teammates, Damien Gasper, who played a few games at the Demons and now over in Perth, but we sort of buddied up, and we were both into getting as big and as strong as fast as we possibly could, and we'd have the what are you having for breakfast? How many wheat bix? How many eggs? Just try and put on weight and size and strength, which we knew that we needed to do. So we went pretty hard from that point of view. I guess as a teenager, as a 17-year-old, played the full years in the Resis, but it was a different kind of game back in those days. I was playing on Chris Mew, who was getting towards the end of his career. So Chris Mew comes back and head-to-head with him. David Rees-Jones, go head-to-head with him. Peter Foster, go head-to-head with him. All these legends of the game. And as a young 17-year-old, you come up against them. So you find out really, really quickly that you need to step up your body shape and your body size if you want to be able to compete at the highest level.
It's quite a romantic time in football when you think back now, because it's so different these days. You go to the footy and basically you might catch a glimpse of the teams warming up, but there used to be times where I'd go to the footy as a kid and you'd just sit there and you'd get there before the reserves started and you'd take in the reserves and everything that went with it before the big game. It was a real day-long experience in those days.
Yeah, no, look, it was fantastic, and obviously when you're playing in it, and you feel as a youngster, you feel the crowd sort of building, and it's a great preparation for stepping into AFL. But because you're right, as the last quarter came around, the stadium was pretty much full. So everyone was keen to get a kick in the last quarter, that's for sure, and strut their stuff. And likewise, it was a great build-up when we were sort of elevated into the senior team and playing and watching, and it was a great sort of sense of club. I guess when it's just like a suburban game where you watch the reserves, or at least the second half of the reserves game, and as part of your preparation for the main one.
Well, we'll talk about that next step, that step up into senior football and the mark that you made on the other side of the break. David Neitz, the Hall of Famer, is my special guest on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funeral, celebrating lives. More with Nita after the break.
You're listening to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
The Melbourne Games and Goals record holder and Hall of Famer David Neitz is my special guest on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives. Speaking of playing in front of big crowds, 1992, you played in the reserves grand final team. One of your first tastes, I guess, of the big time, because you talked about the crowd rolling in. Well, that was always a great experience for the people playing in the middle game, as it was in those days.
Yeah, no, that was it was an interesting game against the Bombers, and they stacked their side. They had Simon Madden came back, and Terry Danaher came back. Alan Izard came back to play that game. And they had guys like James Hurd and Mark McCurry and Joe Mercedes, all those guys that went on obviously to win the premiership next year. The next year they win the AFL premiership, the big dance. So no, it was a. It was good to be a part of the grand final day, but no, we were on the receiving end of a beating from the Bombers again. So they were my nemesis, I guess.
Well, believe it or not, that is now 2 weeks in a row on this program that we've spoken about the 1992 Reserves grand final, because Terry Danaher was my guest last week, and we talked about those great names that were in the team then. All right, the transition comes. You step up to senior footy. We are used to seeing you in the famous number 9. Were you always in the number 9? No. I had the great number 38 on my back for the first season. But yeah, no, it was interesting. So I had Neil Baum came across. John Northey, it was his last year in 92, and I thought I might have been half a chance to crack a game late in 92, but didn't quite get there. And then Neil Baum came across and earmarked me across the pre-season to get me to play. So I was definitely in his thinking, which was a fantastic thing. Although I did almost not get to round one. We were doing a training session out at Wesley College. We've got a campus in Glen Waverley, and we're playing practice games, and we're getting ready to prepare for a practice game up in Darwin. And we had the last session. We had the handball game just in preparation. And unfortunately for me, I had a handball came my way. It was lolly popped up in the air, and coming the other way was a certain Rodney Grinter. Oh no, the worst bloke you could possibly have coming the other way.
You don't want Rod coming the other way, even in training. So, and back in the day, it was everyone. Well, I'm sure it's likewise in today's game as well. But everyone trained really hard. There was really a lot of pressure on for spots, and Rod was a very hard trainer. And I woke up in the change rooms, didn't know what had happened to me. So I nearly didn't make it to round one. But look, Barmy was fantastic for me. He stuck with me, put me up forward to start off with in the first few games, and sort of struggled a bit there. But instead of sticking me back into the twos where it probably should have been, he swung me back and swung me to centre half back, and it was a real a watershed moment for me, really. I played a few good games and found my feet at the level. So for Neil to be able to stick fat with me through that time was a pretty important moment in time for me, I guess.
You're playing centre half back at that time. You're playing on some of the biggest names the game has ever seen.
Yeah, there's so 93. You've got Sticks Kernahan, who we were talking about earlier. He's playing and pretty daunting, and Stewie Lowe coming into the system. I remember I used to be a Saints fan with Dad's history there, and Stewie Lowe, I lined up on him, and I was pretty nervous. And Neil Baum said, "Look, mate, if you get the chance, just jump in the hole in front of Plugger as well."
Yeah.
I didn't do that very often, it's fair to say.
No, probably not a wise move doing that sort of thing.
I'd watched too much of the Saints play to do something so silly.
Yeah.
But no, so guys like Stewie Lowe was just fantastic. Although I did lose my Saints fandom about 3 minutes in. I was so nervous about playing on Stewie. I was all over him and grappling and grabbing him, and he swung the big hand back, and my nose went all over my face, and I decided don't like St Kilda so much anymore.
And they are big hands too. He's been a guest on this program, and when you shake hands with him, you feel as though your hand is just being swallowed up.
Absolutely. Look, he's a fantastic man, but with my nose across my face, he wasn't one of my favourite people at that stage. So yeah, but look, no, you got to play against some of the greats in that position, and then had some good battles with Wayne Carey along the way as well, which was great, and Chris Grant, and just so many good players.
I think it's true that Duck kicked 11 one day or one night, and you spent not the whole game, but I think you spent a fair bit of the game on him. And I think I'm right in saying you walked off saying I couldn't do much more, and he finished up with 11. Yeah,
just a lazy 11. So no, it was an interesting night at the MCG, and he was playing on Sean Smith to start off with, and he kicked 4 with 20 minutes into the first quarter. So and I wasn't going to volunteer, so I saw the runner came in my direction, and I went to the other side of the ground. I don't want to be a part of this, but sure enough, get the tap on the shoulder, and it went down. And you're right. Look, it was just he was in one of those moods where I genuinely still think that I did as much as I could have done, and I remember vividly. There was a contest. I can't remember which quarter it was. It might have been the second quarter or the third quarter, but there was a contest at a half forward, and so I went over spoiled, got the ball towards the boundary line, no worries. Duck springs up, heads back towards the goal square, so I'm right behind him. And the North Melbourne get the ball. Ball gets kicked in to about that 30 metres out in front of goal, towards the Ducks area, and I've tackled him, grabbed him. I've just absolutely mauled him as much as I possibly could, and he just stuck the one glove out, and as he's falling down, wraps it up in his one hand to his chest, and I stood on the mark and thought, and I've never felt this way before, but I just felt helpless. Yeah. I was like, wow, this guy is just amazing. Yeah. So no, we had some good battles. I managed to scalp him a couple of times, but that game was just awesome.
Yeah, it was a turbulent time for the footy club, Nita, in lots of ways. I think you played your first game against Hawthorn, yep. And it would turn out that just a few years later, it looked as though the two entities were about to merge. What was it like around the football club at that time? Yeah, look,
it wasn't a great time. We'd. What did we do? We sort of in '94 we'd played preliminary final in '94, and which was a great experience. And then, 2 years later, we're almost out of the competition as a footy club. The founding club of the competition, and obviously Hawthorn a proud club as well. But it was a strange feeling. The side wasn't going that well, so it made it difficult from that perspective. And then you've got great man of the Melbourne Footy Club who are in charge, and their words were, well, these are the only option that we see going forward, is that we've got to put this to our members, and the club is going to cease to exist. So, look, at the time I was just a young kid going through it, but you feel the gravity of that moment.
Especially in light of what was happening to Fitzroy at that time as well. So it was a stark reality in football.
Yeah, look, it was a tough reality in footy, and seemed that the AFL direction, that was the way that they were going. And obviously Fitzroy, they're now, and some of their supporters, feel that void in their lives, that their team is no longer here in Melbourne as it started. Obviously they've got on board with Brisbane, but yeah, it could have easily been the Melbourne Footy Club. I've had a couple of jokes with a few of the Hawthorn boys at the time that we actually wouldn't have had a bad side.
True.
We didn't get the silverware. We might have Nick Holland in particular, but look, but no, the fact that didn't go through, and credit to the Hawthorn fans in the end, has been a great thing, and we're very happy that the club still exists.
I guess you got a lot to thank Don Scott for, because he was the driving force, and no one will ever forget. It's one of the iconic images of the sport, the Velcro hawk. That was one of the things that we still talk about more than 20 years later, and that was one of the things that stopped the merger going ahead and got the passion going.
Well, absolutely. And look, I guess in some ways the Hawthorn were probably the club that had the most to lose in regards to being Melbourne. The fact that it was Melbourne perhaps made it a little bit more palatable for some of the Demon supporters, but the Hawks were definitely going to be losing a lot of their identity. So yeah, it was Don Scott was the main man, and he did a fantastic job, as it turns out.
Back to the team you were playing with, and you spoke about your great friend Gary Lyon, but there were some big names in the team. It was hard to fathom at times that it was such a roller coaster ride for Melbourne with the raw talent that was there.
Yeah, look, I feel really, really blessed to play with some of the calibre of guys and some of the people. Gary Lyon, who we've spoken about, who's just an amazing leader of men, and a fantastic player as well. It's interesting, and I caught up with him the other day, and he obviously had a great career centre-half back and going forward, full forward, centre-half forward. But he popped into the midfield as well, and did some great things in the midfield. And I said, mate, you look at Bontempelli and all these guys, they've been playing in the wrong position for their whole career. You should have been in the midfield. But look, he was a fantastic player. And then Jim Steins, just enormous, and an enormous person around the footy club, guiding and mentoring players, as was Todd Viney, just a hard man, great values, great family person, and really good people, I guess, to have around your footy club as you're a young kid going through the ranks. So certainly feel pretty lucky with those guys. And then, the guys who I played most of my career with, and there's a whole host you can pick out, I guess. But
who was the bloke, Nita, who was not necessarily the biggest name in the team that you really admired for getting every single drop out of the ability that he had?
Probably the name that would spring to most teammates of mine throughout that era, I think, would be Nathan Brown. He had a whole host of injuries and issues and problems with his body, and his dedication to getting the most out of himself was inspiring. He'd be up all night and icing and doing all sorts of physio work, everything he possibly could do to get himself out on the ground. So I think, as far as that dedication to getting the most out of yourself, and his body was failing at every hurdle, I think he'd probably be the one.
I talked about the roller coaster ride. When we come back on the other side of the break, we'll talk about one of the times when you were at the top of the roller coaster. That day in 2000, when it was probably one of your best days in footy and maybe one of your worst days in footy at the same time. David Neitz is with me for this edition of This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives.
You're listening to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
What a privilege it is to have the Hall of Famer David Neitz as my guest on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funeral Celebrating Lives. Nita, I mentioned it before the break. That day in 2000, that great season in 2000, culminating to going all the way. First of all, the season. When you're playing in a team like that and the premiership is almost so close you can touch it, what's that feeling like throughout the season, waiting for that big day that you think you're justified in dreaming about to arrive?
Yeah, look, the season itself was, particularly the back end of the season, was remarkable. You know, we'd had 98, we had played off in a prelim. 99, not such a great year. All the guys, all the Steinses and the Lions and the Vineys retired. And then 2000 were a pretty young group. You know, I'd just been appointed skipper at the start of the season, so myself and the big ox, David Swartz, had a battle for the captaincy. I guess that's how at least it was played out in the media. But we had a fantastic pre-season, I've got to say, and everything was new and open, and the doors were wide open for everyone to stand up from a leadership perspective. And we had a ripping pre-season throughout that period, and I guess the start of the season we were going along okay, but then it was the back half of the season, and we had young kids, I guess, came in and really supported us. Particularly Brad Green and Cameron Bruce came into our side, and it's amazing what a little bit of youth does to inject into your team, and you just get a bit of a lift out of those kind of things. And we had enough experienced players around to sort of capitalise on that. And we really did. We just got on a roll. We really rolled our way into I think it was something like 10 in a row that we'd won, or something around that.
And some of the scores you were kicking in those games leading into the final series, 170, 150, it was just a goal fest. Yeah,
it was just, it was. And look, and I suppose that era, the game was still really open. It was before the floods came in.
Yeah.
I guess, Terry Wallace, he flooded against the Bombers. I think it was the last round of that year,
that's right.
And that's where it all began. Yeah. So it was a really open sort of style of footy, and it was magnificent to play in. But yeah, we just rolled our way through the season, and even in that final series, we just had a couple of really big wins. I think even in the prelim final, we got over North really convincingly and comfortably. So we had obviously a really important win in the first final against Carlton, where Carlton really, if you look throughout the course of the season, that they probably should have won that game. Throughout that era, but we were able to knock them off. An amazing last quarter of footy in that game. I've never heard a crowd louder than in that. It was almost, can you just please not take it down a notch so we can focus on what we're doing? It was just unbelievable. But to get over the line in that game, switched the final series around a little bit, and instead of facing the Bombers in a prelim, we faced them in a grand final. So it was an amazing ride just to get there.
When you think back to the 2000 grand final, is it a good memory or is it a bitter memory?
It's as you alluded to, it's everything all wrapped up into one. You look back on it now, I mean, it's bitter loss at the time, and a stinging loss. And we got soundly beaten as well. So it was heartbreaking to get there and to have all the dreams that you have leading into the game all come crashing down relatively quickly around you. But I guess you look at it now and you think, well, gee, we got to experience grand final week is an amazing time to be in Melbourne, and to go through the emotional roller coaster, I guess, of how you're going to perform, how you're going to manage your own nerves to be able to get out there and perform on the day. So I guess to be able to at least go through that experience was something I'm really grateful for. But yeah, the actual day itself was pretty ordinary.
Yeah. I've mentioned the roller coaster nature of the team a few times. I'll ask you a question you've probably only been asked about 1,000 times in your life.
Yeah.
Why? Why did it work out that way?
Yeah, look, it's sort of it's a little bit hard. I have been asked the question a million times, and I haven't really found the right answer for anyone at this stage. But yeah, I guess it starts at 98, and as I say, 98 we performed really well. 99 was probably the end of all those champions that I spoke about, and we didn't cope with the loss of Lyon, Viney, Steins in particular. 2000, we probably got to get there a little bit early than we think we're going to be okay, but we got there a little bit early, and as a young side, didn't quite deal with that, I don't think, as well as we could have. 2002 was a big year for us to be able to sort of bounce back and from myself, from a leadership perspective, start to ask questions of the group as to what we really stood for and what we wanted to be seen as a group. So we got ourselves back into finals in 2002, and then the 2003 is the real missing one. There's nothing I can really give to you that the reason behind that one, but we just didn't quite get there in 2003, and then 4, 5, 6 were in finals, but just not quite good enough.
Speaking of that time, there was one other game that you played in, and it was memorable for a reason that you would probably hope never to relive, and that was the Troy Broadbridge game. What are your memories of that time and what the tragedy that happened to the football club and that young man?
Yeah, look, I guess like everyone in the country, it was just a devastating time for so many families and so many people, and a shocking time for our little Melbourne Football Club family as well. So, he and Trish obviously just been married and on their honeymoon, and for that sort of devastation to hit was absolutely heartbreaking for everyone. I mean, we're blessed to have Trish still here with us, and Broadie's final moments of actually pushing her to safety is an absolute mark of the person that he was. Just a selfless, brave, beautiful human being, but sadly gone too early. And I guess from our perspective as a group, we need to. It was over the Christmas period. We need to buckle up and get back to playing footy, which is a million miles from anyone's mind in the immediate sort of aftermath of that. But look, we had really great support around the club. Chris Fagan and Neil Danaher were fantastic. Had the Reverend Cameron Butler was a strong part of that leadership throughout that period. And I guess everyone needed space to deal with that tragedy as they needed to, which we gave everyone. But then there was a time to come back and sort of, and make sure we honour him in the right way, and that was to get out and play in the manner that he would have respected us playing in. So that was sort of what we did. We played against the Bombers in that game, and absolutely emotional, charged game.
I wish we had more time, but time is on the wing, so we're going to take our final break, and then we'll come back and talk about the way it all ended for you, and also talk about something else that you're doing at the moment, because I can tell you we don't normally have alcohol in the studio when we do This Is Your Sporting Life, but today we actually do, and I'll tell you why on the other side of the break with David Neitz. Our final segment coming up after the break.
You're listening to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
Our final segment with Melbourne champion David Neitz. Nita, it all came to an end with a bit of an injury cloud hanging over you at the end of your career.
Yeah, look, it did. In the end, and when it happens quickly. I suppose in the 2007, the body was starting to fall apart a little bit. I had bits of tape here, there, and everywhere on my body, but it ended up being. I woke up one day across the pre-season, 07-08 pre-season, and woke up with a bit of a stiff neck. And this thing never went away, and sort of battled away through the pre-season, played a few games. As it turns out, I had a bulging disc in my neck, which was causing all sorts of pain down my arms, and things like that. I guess it was a giveaway when I was driving to training in a neck brace, ripping the neck brace off, getting out to train, and then getting back in the car, put the neck brace on and drive home again. It was probably a good sign that playing footy was not going to be part of my future for very much longer. But that's how it was.
I remember the reception you got when you played your last game. That was pretty heartwarming.
Yeah, look, it was lovely, and the Melbourne faithful came out and was able to do the lap of honour, which was magnificent. You would love to have been actually able to plan it and play your last game and go out still playing, but man, no, my last game was ended with a Jared Waite tackle, round 6 on the MCG, and all of a sudden she was over. Yeah. So, but that's footy.
And he's still going around the old boy, and he's going all right at the moment too.
Absolutely, he's going along beautifully. So, and the North Melbourne team are going along very, very well. So, exciting times for him.
So, you've got a terrace named after you at the MCG. You've even got the David Neitz medal named after you. Tell us the other winners of the David Neitz medal at the moment.
No, I'm sitting pretty on my own in the 300 club. It's a very, very lonely get-together, I can assure you. So,
do you think Jonesy will get there?
He's got 2.5, 3 years to get there. Yeah. So, I think the way he's playing, there's no reason why he can't get there. So I hope he does and smashes his way through it.
And just finally, I alluded to this before the break that we're normally, it's a very dry zone when we do this show, Nita. But this has changed today because you've actually brought something in, and I have them in front of me. There they are. Have a listen to this. What are these little cans that I have in front of me?
No, I've got a little beer company that I've started for the last couple of years. We've been up and going, called Brewmanity. And we've got the Social Beast has been out there in the marketplace for the last little while. But it started with Neil, obviously, with all the things that he's doing with fundraising to help fight MND. We had an interest in beer, myself and a couple of mates, and we'd been talking about starting a beer brand, and we said, well, let's do it, and we'll raise funds for Neil along the way. So we've done a few charity events. Each beer that we sell, a bit of it goes back to fight MND, and so we raised about $175,000 so far, and hopefully if people keep drinking the beer, we'll keep fundraising for the cause.
Well, it's appropriate that this interview should go to air the day before the big day at the MCG with all of the coaches involved. It's going to be a great occasion tomorrow.
Well, get down to First Choice Liquor and celebrate if you're not going to the game itself. But look, no, the walk to the G from Federation Square is just an enormous part of the calendar for the Melbourne Footy Club and the Collingwood Football Club these days, and it really has turned into an absolute blockbuster. And the way the seasons are going, what a fantastic game it's going to be. I can't wait for it.
We raise Brewmanity to you, David Neitz, for a great career, the Melbourne Games record, the Melbourne Goals record, and fittingly the induction into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations on that. Congratulations on a magnificent career, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Pete. Cheers.
David Neitz, my special guest on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funeral, celebrating lives. Don't forget, support the big game tomorrow. Get behind Neil Danaher and the fight against motor neurone disease. And we will have another very special guest. In fact, next week we're going to have a man who I reckon Nita would have crossed swords with a little bit. The great Anthony Koutoufides will be my guest on This Is Your Sporting Life next week for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives.